issue. CARB is making a momentous vote tomorrow. They, all but killed the electric car a few years ago, and I think that, they have the potential to either resurrect it tomorrow or, kill what's left of it. So we've amassed a good little group of people for you today with a variety of perspectives. We have an expert on the national security implications of these issues, Jim Woolsey. We have one of the most prominent environmental organizations, Sierra Club, and we have the only electric car manufacturer that is so committed to electric drive that they're actually lobbying for higher numbers instead of all of the other automakers that are arguing for lower ones. So thank you very much again for coming. I think first I'd like to bring up Jim Woolsey, former director of CIA, is how most of you know him best. Definitely one guy that I think has the most appropriate perspective on hydrogen I have ever seen.
Thanks, Chels. To cut right to the chase, I think there are two major things wrong with this CARB draft. The first is that it tilts toward hydrogen and away from electric vehicles in its incentives. This makes no sense at all. This makes no sense at all from any point of view. First of all, hydrogen. It's always great to be upstaged by the Rainforest Action Network. Plug in America, great, both, sorry, whatever, all the good folks. It makes no sense at all to give hydrogen an edge over electricity. By converting either natural gas or electricity into hydrogen, trying to store it, put it in a fuel cell, and then converting it back to electricity again, you lose something between 1/3 and 2/3 to 3/4 of the energy. So you're throwing away what could have been used to power another 2 or 3 vehicles in addition to the fuel cell. Then you've got the huge expense of the fuel cell, which has to come down several factors of 10 before it's going to be reasonably affordable. And then finally, you have the infrastructure problem with hydrogen. It depends on whether you want to only convert a few fueling stations around the country, reasonable numbers, so people could, with some driving, have access to hydrogen refueling, in which case you're talking about an investment of tens of billions of dollars for the country. Or if you want to convert most filling stations, the neighborhood filling stations, so that you can produce and store explosive hydrogen and pump it, you are talking about something on the order of hundreds of billions of dollars of infrastructure for the country. And indeed, a couple of experts I've talked to, one, a former Secretary of Energy, says, no, Jim, not just hundreds of billions, at least $1 trillion in infrastructure. Well, driving over here, I decided to pick up a spare piece of infrastructure for my plug-in hybrid. My Prius was converted 3-4 weeks ago by A123 to be a plug-in. It's got a nice 20-mile battery in it, overnight charge. I charge it from the photovoltaics on the roof of my farmhouse, so I drive on sunlight. And I had earlier picked up my required infrastructure for that plug-in hybrid from Walmart. This time I decided I would have a spare piece of infrastructure, and I got it from Kmart. It was $4.97.
Yeah!
That's the infrastructure you need for an electric vehicle or a plug-in hybrid, as contrasted to the tens to hundreds of billions of dollars plus for hydrogen. Now, why in the world would any institution in its right mind tilt toward hydrogen if it has any public interest in moving away from oil and having an equally good car from the point of view of emissions? Why would it tilt toward hydrogen and away from electricity? It is inexplicable. The second thing that's a problem with the CARB draft is that it treats, in addition to radically reducing the requirement for electric vehicles by down to 10%, it also defines plug-in hybrids in such a way that a plug-in hybrid that only gets about 5 miles all electric counts the same, essentially, very close to the same, that a really good plug-in hybrid that would get more than 30 or up to 40 miles all electric would get. A 40-mile battery charge on a plug-in hybrid covers more for an individual car. More than 3/4 of the cars every day on the road go less than 40 miles. So it's fair to say that a plug-in hybrid that gets over 30 miles, say 40 miles on an overnight battery charge, is something like 3/4 of an all-electric vehicle. It's much closer to being an electric vehicle than it is to being something that just gets 5 miles on a battery charge. In both of these regards, the CARB draft, by relatively penalizing capable plug-in hybrids and by tilting toward hydrogen and away from electric vehicles, toward billions to tens of billions to hundreds of billions to $1 trillion or more of infrastructure costs for this country, instead of buying your infrastructure at Walmart and Kmart, CARB is on the verge of doing a great disservice to our national security, to increasing our dependence on oil, to putting off the day when we can drive on something other than oil into the very, very, very distant future. They should stop, think, listen to the people who are testifying here, and move forward in a positive direction instead of a negative one. Thank you very much.
Yeah.